How you doing, Henry? Yeah, Henry, I'm really excited to have you as my driver. You know, I'm one of the only superintendents in the state of Michigan that actually gets a driver. I think you're going to enjoy what you're about to see. Chippewa Valley CTE Auto Tech program had the opportunity to listen to Michigan lemon law lawyer Steve Lehto. Steve has been practicing law for over 30 years, but that's not all Steve does. He has written several award-winning books on historical topics. Steve has his own YouTube channel, Lehto's Law, with 250,000 subscribers. Here he discusses everyday topics that have legal ramifications. During his presentation, Steve conveys a message that no one should limit themselves to one career path. A student should not keep blinders on when building their future. What wonderful advice given to our students. Hope you find Steve's presentation as fascinating as I did. We got about 3 hours, Henry, before we got to be there, so I'll tell you what. That would be just about the right amount of time for us to head over to Chick-fil-A, get in line, and get ourselves a chicken sandwich. First of all, Steve, thanks for being with us today here with our CTE students, our auto tech kids from both our high schools, Chippewa Valley and Dakota. And your presentation today, you talked a lot about kind of the jobs that you've had in your career, which have kind of led to your presentation that you've done here for the students. Talk a little bit about the jobs you've kind of, I think you have lots of jobs. Tell us about them.
There's nothing wrong with having multiple interests. It's just you have to figure out which one can maintain your interest the longest. It might be which one you can support yourself with. One of the reasons I'm not in radio right now is because you can't make a living in radio. It's almost impossible. I'm a practicing attorney. I've been practicing law for 30 years, and I specialize in lemon law, which is defective automobiles. But I kind of got there in a roundabout way. I became a lawyer at 29. So I obviously took some time off between high school and undergraduate and my law school. And along the way, I held different jobs. At one point in time, I drove a tow truck and I pumped gas at a gas station. I loved cars, and I got paid to work at a gas station. Later on, I got my undergraduate degree. I also worked in radio for a while. I loved being in radio. And I realized that radio wasn't going to be the career that was there for me. So I wound up going to law school, and I discovered that the communication skills I picked up as a disc jockey would help me in law school. I'm a lawyer, and I'm also a writer, and I also have a YouTube channel. And I've got 240,000 subscribers on YouTube. So that's actually become a job for me also. But I'm technically a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 30 years. My specialty is automotive law, though. I specialize in lemon law. You can help people who've got defective cars, which plays into one of my other things. I'd worked in gas stations. I've always loved cars. People call my office with defective cars, and I can talk to them about defective cars, and that's my job now. So it's interesting that I picked up skill sets along the way. I never planned on working at a gas station for the rest of my life. I wasn't going to work in radio for the rest of my life, but there were important skills I picked up at those jobs that helped me with my current job.
So when you were young and you were getting out of high school, did you feel pressure to decide what you wanted to do and make a commitment to something? Were your parents saying to you, "What are you going to do, Steve?"
Yeah, and that's the thing. Both my parents are educators, and since I was very little, you're going to college. And that changed in like junior high or high school to, what are you going to study in college? And when I got out of high school, I started studying communication arts because I wanted to go into radio. And I realized that that's really not how most people got into radio. So I actually dropped out for a little while because that didn't make much sense to me. And so in my life, I've been a tow truck driver. I worked in radio. I supported myself selling sunglasses. I kid you not. I actually at one point in time owned a company that sold sunglasses. I bounced around at a couple other jobs, and then I realized I wanted to go to law school. I was 27 years old. I decided to go to law school. So I went to law school. I'd already got an undergraduate degree in history, and I find history interesting, but I didn't think I could make a living with history, although writing the books and stuff kind of played into that. I did very well in law school, graduated, and got a law degree. But if you'd asked me in high school, do you ever picture yourself as an attorney someday? I would have thought, no, I don't even know how to get there from here. And it took a little bit of maturity, a little bouncing around from different jobs, and talking to other people I knew. And a very good friend of mine went to law school and talked to me about it. And I put all those things together, and that's what I wound up doing. So It wasn't a direct path. It was not something I could have foretold, but I got where I am and it worked out. And a lot of it is just kind of adapting to what happens along the way. But it's also important to realize how many skills you can acquire at one job that you can take with you to your next job.
You know, there's an educational philosopher who talks about finding out what it is you do well and combining that with what you love to do.
Right.
So how does that fit with kind of your career and what you've done?
Kind of migrated over to doing lemon law because that's, like I said, is I get to practice law and work with cars. I've written 12 books. So I've written these books about cars, a biography of Bobby Isaac, just a standalone biography about the man who raced that car. A couple other oddball things, American Murder Houses. I wrote a biography of Douglas Houghton, the guy they named everything after, who was an explorer in Michigan in the 1830s. A book about the Italian hull disaster in the Upper Peninsula where somebody yelled fire and 73 people died. I started writing because I enjoy writing. Lawyers write a lot, but what we write isn't fun. We write briefs, we write lawsuits, we write complaints, we write discovery. Very, very boring, mundane, technical things. It's very, very painful to be someone who wants to write and be forced to write this technical stuff all day long. So as an outlet, I started writing creatively. I started writing books about history. And I'd interview people, or I'd go out and research in libraries, and I'd find things to write about. And I got some books published. And the books don't make anywhere near enough money to justify me writing them. If you said, how many hours did you put into this? How much money did you make off the book? You know, how much did you get paid by the hour for that? It doesn't pay as well as being a lawyer, but it's more fun. It was an outlet for me. And it turns out that that presented more opportunities for me. And so I get a lot of credibility. For instance, people go, oh, you've written a book. You've written a book. And so, you know, if nothing else, it's a great resume builder. But it's been a lot of fun. And there's something neat about going into my office. I've got a shelf of books that I've written. Clients walk in and they look at my shelves and they go, wait, these books are all written by you. And they were, but it was mainly for the fun of doing it. I enjoy doing it.
So with your experiences along the way, what are some like the life lessons you try to impart to the students?
So many people think that you have to make a decision at the age of 15 what you're going to do with your life. Everyone in this room has been asked by a relative, what are you going to do with your life? And you feel bad if you can't give them an answer. You know, I'm going to become a marine biologist or whatever. And the point is that it would be nice if you knew what you want to do at 15, but you don't have to know what you want to do at 15 or 16 or 17 or 18. Don't ever think that you've gotten someplace and that you can stop moving. A lot of people think that my goal is when I get to that spot right there, whether it's a job or it's an achievement in life. And the point is that, you know, life is a journey. It's not the destination. There's going to be many destinations along the way, and those destinations could be jobs. They could be, you know, places you move, people you meet. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen. But understand that if you wind up in some place in life that you're not happy with, you're not stuck there. Mm-hmm. You can keep moving. You can keep moving. And so, you know, if I look back on the different jobs I had, you know, I could still be at a gas station right now. I could still be working in radio right now. There's nothing inherently wrong with those things, but they weren't what I was meant to do with my life. But they helped me get where I am right now.
So what's the next stop for Steve Lehto? what are you thinking about?
You know, it's hard to say, because right now, for instance, I have a YouTube channel that's got almost 250,000 subscribers. And 5-6 years ago, when I started putting stuff up on YouTube, I never imagined that anybody would subscribe to me at all, or that I'd make money from doing it. And it turns out that now that is actually a viable career move. And yet, YouTube didn't exist when I got out of high school. And so there are things down the road that you might not be able to imagine yet. Just keep moving, do what you enjoy doing, and if you find yourself doing something you don't enjoy doing, understand that you might be able to move on into something else and bring the skill sets that you're learning now along with you.
So no lesson is wasted with you, is it?
I am convinced that nothing in your life is wasted if you learn from it. Mm-hmm. And there were times I've had bad jobs. I've had jobs that I hated, where I didn't like the boss. I didn't like where I was working. I didn't like what I was doing. And years later, I looked back and I go, but I learned something. I learned patience, or I learned some skill there that I wouldn't have learned elsewhere. And I was so focused on the fact that I was unhappy being there that I didn't realize till later what I was learning there. Life is a learning experience. Everything you're doing can be building your resume. Whether it's literally something you put in a resume or not doesn't matter. you learn stuff along the way. It might just be learning how to deal with difficult people. But if you learn something where you are, it's valuable.
So when you think about what your career and everything you've done, and you look back, when were you the happiest with where you were and what you were doing?
I'm actually happiest right now. I am. But I've been happy before. And it's not like I have periods of gloom and then periods of happiness. Each time that I made a major step, you know, when I decided I wanted to go to law school and I got admitted to law school, it was a big deal. I was very happy about that. When I graduated law school, I was very happy about that. My first couple years out of law school where I quite hadn't figured out what type of law I wanted to practice, I wasn't unhappy, but when I started focusing on lemon law and realized I could talk to people about cars all day long and get paid to do it, I was happier. So people buy defective cars, call me all day long, and I've sued GM, Ford, and Chrysler so many times they know me. But, you know, it's part of doing business. You know, and so all you're doing is fine-tuning, refocusing, you know, moving along and dialing it in, for lack of a better phrase.
I want to ask you a couple questions about the lawyer part of your career and that. I'm old enough to know where we've been with lemon law, with certain cars and that kind of thing. What did the car companies think of you?
Interestingly enough, the car companies don't mind me. And I sue Ford, GM, and Chrysler so often that I know the attorneys there on a first-name basis. And in fact, I taught law school for 10 years. Several of my former students now are attorneys for the big three. And so I'll call them to talk to them about a case. Hey, professor, how are you? And so interestingly, as the cost of doing business, if you sell cars, some will be defective. And they understand that. And I'm actually one of the reasonable attorneys they deal with. There are some attorneys out there who are notoriously difficult to deal with. And I talk to the attorneys at GM, Ford, and Chrysler, and they go, yeah, we don't mind you, we mind them. So I've learned how to get along with them. It's almost like a collaborative process, settling a case. It's a lemon law case.
You know, I want to ask you just a little bit about that, if it's changed over time. I just know from certain cars that would get hit in the rear and burst into flames back when I was growing up, things like that. And are cars any less lemons than they were then, or?
The problem we've got with cars nowadays is they're so complicated. So, you know, in the 60s, you could pop the hood in a car and tell what was under there. It's an engine, there's a radiator, there's a battery. Pop the hood in a car today, and if you can see past the cover that's over the engine, you've got all kinds of computer control modules and wiring harnesses and several modules that got to communicate with each other and all kinds of sensors. And the most common problem nowadays is a vehicle that's got a weird malfunction that nobody can figure out. And that was not happening when I started 30 years ago. 30 years ago, it was something that we know what it is, we can't fix it. Now, more often than not, I hear we know what it doesn't do, but we don't know why. And that's because they've built the car so complicated that the dealerships are actually stymied by it.
So is your business dealing with lemons still as big as what it always was? Or?
It always is. And the reason is, if you build 100,000 of a product, they can't all be perfect. A few bad ones will slip through. And so nowadays there's not like an entire line of cars that's bad. People go like, tell me the worst car out there. There really aren't any cars like that are that bad across the entire platform for the most part. Usually it's just these cars are so complicated that every now and then we get one where two control modules are defective. We can't figure out what's causing this weird malfunction, and we don't know what it is.
You were speaking to CTE students today who are interested in working on cars. And you obviously, as a young person, like doing that kind of thing. Are these kids missing anything now with the way cars are made?
They're not missing anything, but I think they're required to have a higher level of skills. Because in the old days, fixing a car in your driveway was something you could do quite easily with a toolbox full of tools. Nowadays, there's all kinds of computers on there and things you need readers for. And we didn't have those tools back then because we didn't need them. And so I think that there is going to be a need for the highly skilled people who are taking these programs at dealerships today to try to fix the problems that I just told you about that cause a lot of the lemons to come to my office.
Yeah, we deal with dealers. These kids have opportunities to work with dealers, and they're really having a difficult time right now with getting, the workforce there to deal with technical issues and to be trained. So you've seen a lot of change in automobiles with where you started as a teenager to where we are now with cars, and so we hear a lot of talk about the change in the future of cars. What does it look like? What do you see?
Well, electric vehicles are on the horizon, and there are more and more of them on the road every day. And there are people out there who say that we're going to be a fully electric fleet on the road somewhere down the road, possibly in our lifetimes, which if you told me that when I was in high school, I never would have believed it. but electric vehicles are coming. But there's still going to be need for people to service them and to fix them and sell them. So there is going to be a shift in the industry, and I suspect that they're going to have to start learning some extra skills on how to work with the electric drivetrains in these vehicles. But there's always going to be a need for technicians at dealerships.
So in our CTE program that listened to you today, what do you say about the future for those kids and what they're learning here right now?
Well, the one thing about the electric vehicles is they're in the future. There are some of them on the road right now, but there's still a very, very small percentage of them. And so there will be the piston-powered cars on the road for quite some time. Those skills will always be necessary, at least for a few decades going forward. Somewhere along the road, as it transitions over to EVs, there's going to be an extra field of study. I'm sure they're going to have to study the motors as well as the engines. But, you have to fix electric cars too.
Okay. All right, well, Steve, thanks for coming to Chippewa Valley today. And as soon as this camera's off, we're going to get a couple big boxes of popcorn and a couple jumbo Cokes and just sit here, okay?
Okay.
Pull down the screen and watch a movie.
There we go.
Talladega Nights.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. Hey, Henry, thanks for waiting. I'm telling you, Henry, that's Steve Lehto, one interesting guy. I learned so much about cars. More than I ever knew. Henry, you like cars? Oh, I can tell your tongue is out of your mouth again. You know what, Henry? That makes me think of something. I'm a little bit hungry right now. Hey, let's head on over to Popeye's Chicken. I love that chicken sandwich they serve there. No, you got time. You're going to get home to the kids tonight. It's not a 3-hour wait for a Popeye's chicken sandwich. It's like an hour and a half. Let's head on over there. 19 Mile Road, Henry, let's go.